Welcome back everyone, Mariah Monetize here, and in today's video I am going to be going over 17 tips, 17 things that you should consider before finding a place to live in Puerto Rico. So most of these things can be applied whether you're interested in renting or owning in Puerto Rico. So it's been almost 4 years since I moved from California all the way over to Puerto Rico, and prior to living in Puerto Rico, California was the only place I've lived. So these are things that I really didn't think about when searching for a place to live here in Puerto Rico. What you need to understand is that inventory is extremely low, whether you're looking to rent or whether you're looking to buy. When I moved to Puerto Rico back in 2018, I had zero interest in buying. The whole idea of Hurricane Maria really scared me, and I had no idea if Puerto Rico was actually going to rebuild and how long the process was going to take. So I also heard people's stories about really not getting insurance money back after Hurricane Maria, so that really turned me off and I decided to rent instead. So a few things is like, for example, if the place is unlivable, if there's no running water, if there's no electricity, that's something you actually want to consider getting in your lease if you take that route, that, basically maybe you can terminate the lease if the place becomes unlivable at any point. I have found it easiest to kind of be open to several different areas across the San Juan area, anywhere from Old San Juan to Isla Verde to Ocean Park, Condado, Miramar. I think it's best to kind of not be so set on one particular neighborhood because one, they're all fairly close to each other, and two, I personally prefer to get exactly what I'm looking for, and the location isn't as big of a deal, mainly because I have a car, but if you're looking for a place where things are more walkable, then that changes the scenario. So let's go ahead and get into it. The 17 things that you will want to consider before finding a place to live in Puerto Rico. Number one, parking. Is there parking for you? How far is the parking from where you'll be living? Is there one space? Are there two spaces? Are there three spaces? But also consider this, if you're someone that likes to host and have friends over, where are your friends going to park? Are they going to have to Uber to your place every time? How convenient will it be for people to visit you? These are things that you absolutely want to consider. Number two thing you want to consider is laundry. Is there laundry in your unit? Is there laundry that you get to share with other people living around you? Are you going to be living in a condo that might not have laundry in the unit, but it might actually have laundry in a shared space downstairs? You may even find a scenario where there is no laundry on site and there's not even hookups for laundry on site. So that means you're going to have to find a nearby service to get your laundry done, whether that's going to a laundromat or maybe finding a place that will actually pick up your laundry. This is the thing, life is too short to spend a ton of time dealing with your laundry. So although at first you might be willing to give up on a place or give into a place because there is no laundry on site, you're probably going to regret it. So if you're someone that's interested in moving to Puerto Rico, you also might be someone, since you landed on my channel, that's interested in cryptocurrency and probably saving a bit on taxes. So today I'm going to be sharing with you iTrust Capital. iTrust Capital is a Bitcoin IRA. And what's great about them is they have 0 monthly fees. Using a Bitcoin IRA is an excellent way to shield yourself from taxes in the long term. What's really cool is that if you actually trade within your IRA account, you get taxed 0%. And iTrust Capital also only charges 1% for trades. You can invest 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and the costs are super low. Like I said, it is $0 for monthly fees. iTrust Capital has institutional grade crypto custody, so you do not need to be concerned about your funds. And they also have a wide variety of different cryptocurrencies that you can actually invest in within your IRA. So if this sounds good to you, I have a link down below where you could check out iTrust Capital and they can get you set up today so that you can start investing for the future. One thing to definitely check if you're interested in a particular place is there hot water in the kitchen and in the bathroom sinks? Obviously, coming from the States, there's always hot water in the kitchen, and there's typically always hot water in the bathrooms. But let me tell you, I have had a friend who is paying $16,000 a month in rent, and there is no hot water in the kitchen. It doesn't matter if you're looking at a place for $1,000 or if you're looking at a place for $20,000. Check to make sure that there is hot water in the bathroom sinks as well as the kitchen sinks. Number 4, water pressure is key. There are a lot of places that don't really have that great of water pressure. And in Puerto Rico, you're gonna be at the beach and you're gonna be out and about and you're just gonna wanna come home and take a nice shower and feel really, really clean afterwards. And water pressure, let me tell you what, you might think that it's not that big of a deal, but then if you're in a scenario where your place doesn't have that great of water pressure, it's really going to be a huge bummer. So check the water pressure in all the sinks, all the showers, check everything. So while we're on the topic of water, is there a cistern for your building? For example, Puerto Rico just had a nearly 3-day water outage. I should be more specific here. San Juan had 3 days of no water. And there was some areas that were getting water back while other areas wouldn't. We would get a little bit of a trickle back and then it would go away. It was a complete nightmare. I had to pack my bags. I had to go shower at a friend's house. So if you're living in a condo, you may have access to their cistern, but ask, how many gallons is it? Will you basically have only a certain amount that you can use? How many days is a water supply going to last? And then if you're in an apartment building, see, is it just for your unit? Are you gonna be sharing that cistern with other units? These are definitely things to take into consideration. But what I want you to also understand, for example, right, I didn't have water for 3 days. I got lucky, I had a friend that had water. I was able to get a hot shower. But at the same time, you know, it's like having to gather water, go to the store, hopefully there's not a run on water. So it has happened before. This is not the first time I've experienced a 3-day water outage. Just a couple years ago, same thing. It also depends on which neighborhood you're in. Some neighborhoods experience more water outages than others. Number 6, flush the toilets. I know this sounds a little bit crazy, but for example, in my neighborhood, when it rains a lot, the toilets don't flush very well. So you want to make sure that you have a toilet that flushes really well because you do not want to deal with any plumbing issues. And let me tell you what, I've experienced horrible plumbing issues. I know people that have experienced horrible plumbing issues, so it is absolutely a thing. And you may even want to have like a plumber inspect the system before you move into the place if you really don't want to deal with that. So it's definitely a common thing that happens. Number 7, is the neighborhood really loud? For example, there are some streets that are a lot louder than others. The street that I'm on now, I get a lot of cars driving by all day with loud music. I also live near a child care center, so there is a playground where I hear the kids screaming and yelling constantly. So some things you don't think about, you need to consider dogs. For example, a previous place that I lived, the neighbor's dog would bark so loudly that it actually sounded like the dog was inside my house. When I would talk on the phone with people, they'd be like, "Did you get a dog? It sounds like there's a dog inside your house." And it was just relentless barking all day, all night. So Puerto Rico is a very loud place. If you want to avoid the loudness, you want to go up to the mountains, away from everyone. But if you're living in the San Juan area, there are a lot of areas that are really loud. So for example, if you're someone that makes YouTube videos and you need it to be quiet in the background, it is something that you absolutely want to consider. You also want to take into consideration what floor you're living on, right? So for example, if you're on the first floor and there's a hurricane or there is really intense rainstorms, you might be in a zone that floods very easily. So take that into consideration with which level that you are choosing to live on. Also, I do believe that if you're on a lower level, you're more likely to have things like critters running around your house. Lizards, cockroaches, right? They tend to hang on the first floor area. So those are just common things in Puerto Rico, something that you definitely want to consider when it comes to which floor you select to live on. You also want to consider the easeability of moving furniture around, right? If you're moving in and out of the apartment. For example, like I had some movers move furniture from one apartment to another, and the furniture wasn't fitting in the elevator, so then they had to take it down the stairs, so then it took them longer, then it cost me more money. So that is something that you definitely want to keep in mind. It's like there's a lot of people living in the tight like city area, and there's not a lot of houses, so you can easily find yourself living in a condo because there's way more condo options than there are housing options. So something you want to keep in mind. And also, for example, if you are someone, you're probably going to be, getting groceries all the time and what floor you're on definitely matters. So for example, I've seen building apartments that are like 3 or 4 floors without an elevator. So think about it. If you're carrying water up your stairs, all your groceries, like you might as well just call it a workout at that point, because you're definitely gonna be sweating by the end of it. Number 10, is the area qualified for high-speed internet? So fiber optics is excellent in Puerto Rico. Over Wi-Fi, I'm getting 500 upload and download speed. And so that is something you really want to consider if high-speed internet is something that you are dependent on when it comes to your work. And a lot of people come to Puerto Rico and are exporting services and they're working from home. Definitely take into consideration if the neighborhood that you're living in qualifies for internet. A lot of places include internet, but make sure you test the internet before you sign that contract, because I've also had a situation where internet was included, but the internet was definitely not good. Number 11, check your cell phone service in your home. So the service that I already had, the phone provider, worked in Puerto Rico, so I didn't have to switch or anything like that. But what you want to keep in mind is that there's a lot of dead spots on this island. So nothing would be more annoying if, can you hear the dog? I bet you can hear the dog. Can you hear the dog? That's what I'm talking about. It's loud. Dogs everywhere, kids screaming all the time, music up and down the streets. Wow, good timing on this dog. But anyways, check your cell phone service throughout the house that you will be living in. Nothing is more annoying than if you're someone that needs to make a lot of phone calls and your calls are dropping throughout the day. So I would definitely take into consideration what your cell service is like in that particular home or apartment. So how often does the water and electricity go out? You're probably gonna have to ask neighbors to get a good idea of this. But like I said, there's some neighborhoods that are way worse than others when it comes to this particular situation. So for example, one street I lived on, I had no issues with power, constant issues with water. Where I'm living now, typically no water issues, typically no electricity issues, but like I said, we just had this major outage, but it was a San Juan-wide outage. Number 13, does the building have a generator? So there are some apartment buildings, be careful. They might say, yes, we have a generator, but the generator will only be used, for example, for common areas and elevators. You won't actually get electricity to your apartment. So make sure that you ask that particular question. So like I said, some condos do, some condos don't. A lot of homes or even like walk-up apartments probably won't have a generator. You may want to consider getting your own. And you also want to understand, if you're living in a condo with a generator, know the rules. For example, how many gallons of fuel do they have on hand? How many days is it going to last? Do they only give you electricity for certain time periods throughout the day? Will they limit how much you use? So you kind of have to overthink things here, because it's probably not going to be in your favor, whatever the situation is, when actually having or getting the resources that you need. And I would, just to be honest with you, you kind of have to always have low expectations. If they tell you, oh, we have enough fuel for 5 days, I would just chalk it up at 2.5. So you just can't have high expectations, because in most cases, they will overpromise and underdeliver. It's shocking anytime someone says something that is accurate. That's just how the island life kind of is. Number 14, I know this is a little bit crazy, but a lot of places don't have ovens. So stovetops are pretty common, but I've actually seen a lot of places without ovens. And I'm like, listen, I gotta make my homemade chocolate chip cookies. I need an oven. So the worst thing would be like, you tour a place, you love it, you think it's perfect, and then you move in and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't have an oven. And if that's something that you use constantly, that would be very bad. So sometimes it's things that like you don't think about looking for, but in Puerto Rico, housing is just so different than what I was used to that you kind of have to just double check everything. Number 15, consider which rooms have AC. So for example, I'm so fortunate in the house that I live in now, every room has an individual AC. There's an AC in the common area. You should definitely test it out, because sometimes they put air conditioners that are way too small for the space, and you kind of want to think about your work area. So for example, the place that I'm in now, it's always cool. Sometimes I don't even need to actually run the air conditioner. I don't know if it's because of the floor I'm on, it's just typically cool. The previous place I lived was burning up constantly. It was always extremely hot. It was nearly impossible to function in that place, even with 2 air conditioners, and a 1-bedroom apartment. So that's something you definitely want to, consider, especially if you're someone that runs hot. Like, you do not want to be miserable, hot and sweaty in your house all the time. Number 16, consider the safety of the neighborhood. In San Juan, I consider most places to be fairly safe, but you might be someone that really cares about a gated area. In my personal opinion, it seems like in Puerto Rico, the gated communities are really valued. But in my opinion, you typically don't have to say much to get past the guard or to get past the gate. Most neighborhoods, you definitely, if you care about that, you want to actually test the security. Because, for example, I go to my friend's home this morning and all I had to say was the number of her home. I didn't have to say anything else. I didn't have to show an ID. There was nothing. I don't even think they took down my license plate. That was it. I just had to say B4 and they let me through. So all gates are very different when it comes to the level of security, and if that's something that you care about, then you would definitely want to do some due diligence on exactly what their process is like. Number 17, this doesn't apply to me, but I have friends that mention this constantly, and it's if you have pets. So it is challenging to find like just a place with a yard. There's not like a lot of grass in Puerto Rico, I would say, and like I said, there's a lot more condos than there are homes. So if you have a pet, right, you really need to consider what that situation is like. Do you really want to have to get up in the middle of the night to like take your dog outside to use the bathroom? You want to think about the convenience aspect of that. So not an issue that I've had. I don't have pets, but just hearing from my friends, I know a lot of people come here, they bring their pets, so it's something that you would definitely want to consider. So I hope you found this video valuable when it comes to tips on finding a place to live here in Puerto Rico. I know that this would have helped me tremendously when I first moved here 4 years ago, and hopefully it can help you too. So that is all that I have for you today. As always, go out there and create a portfolio that you love.